Very good. It's 1 o'clock, and we will begin our EDIC meeting for today. We have 3 items on the agenda. Agenda item number 1 is to approve the Tax Exempt Review Committee meeting minutes of 4/25/23. We have those in front of us, and if there are any changes or corrections, otherwise we will accept a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? Any changes? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 2 is a request for a TIF for 502 8th Street row houses. Jim, to get us started, Jim Gilmore.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a request for a tax increment financing district at 502 8th Street South. It's smaller than a lot of the TIFs we've typically had, but the single lot, it does have a deteriorated building on the site, and it certainly is appropriate, I think, for redevelopment. The particular plan has been reviewed by the planning department. I think everyone's comfortable with the new design. It would be kind of townhome style apartments, although the developers are designing it so that at some point in the future they could sell them as individual properties and make them owner occupied. What I'd like to do first is I believe we have Matt Snacklenberg online from PFM. He can walk through that but-for report and talk about how he feels that this project really would not be feasible without the TIF assistance. The TIF assistance is for about $300,000. The development cost is estimated at $2.1 million. Matt, are you online?
Yes, good afternoon. So I will run through my analysis in the report that was provided. As we have done before, we built our own pro forma. We built a 15-year pro forma, and we discussed some inputs and assumptions with the developer, and also made our own assumptions. And by building that, what we look at is an internal rate of return, and we also look at debt service coverage. And so the results for this project, without public assistance, the internal rate of return is projected at 5.5%. While with assistance, we're looking at about 9%. And again, for a project like this, we're probably looking in a reasonable rate of return in the 10 to 15% range. We also look at debt service coverage. So without assistance, it kind of ranged from about a 1 times coverage to 1.16 times coverage. And with assistance, we're looking at kind of a 1.32 coverage to about a 1.5 times coverage. And generally speaking, lenders for a type of project like this would require a 1.2 times coverage. So without assistance, it is falling short of that. And then, as we've done in the past, we also looked at some sensitivity analyses. We looked at what would happen to the internal rate of return and the coverage if the project was reduced. It would have to be reduced by almost 20%. And that's, in this environment, probably not going to happen, especially at this stage in the game. We also look at increasing rental rates. That would have to be increased by almost 14%. And that's a large increase, again, at this stage in the process. And then we look at combining both an increase or a reduction in the project size and an increase to the rates, to the rental rates. And we're looking at about 8% for rental rate increase. I'm sorry, about 7.5% for rental rates, and about 8% for reduction in the project itself. to become viable at that 1.2 times coverage. So, we don't think, I would say either of those maybe could happen independently, but I don't see that happening combined together to happen. So, our conclusion is that this project really wouldn't be viable but for the public assistance offered by the city. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Do we have any questions from anyone? Jim, I have a question. I don't know if you know the number of what the current property tax is paid on that property, and then what would be paid once this expires. What would the property tax be paid?
I think the current property taxes are in the range of $2,000, and when this expires, it'll be closer to $25,000.
Very good. Thank you. And then are they asking for a 15-year TIF? Is that correct?
Yeah, this would max at 15 years. I think some of the projections are it'll be a few years less than that, depending on what the values are. I'll have Dave Noah kind of walk through the project also, in case you have any questions for him. But
Just one more real quick. That's not in the Renaissance zone either?
no, it's right on the edge.
Okay, very good. So if you don't mind me introducing Dave Noah, so Dave Noah and I have known each other for a very long time, and obviously we're obviously very old at this point, but in 1979, we played in the Shrine All-Star football game, and Dave Noah was the left guard and I was the left tackle. Is that true, Dave?
Yeah, I'm 5'7". How tall are you?
I'm 6'7". It was very fun. Anyway, it was very fun. Go
And
ahead.
my body hurts really bad because of those days.
We live to tell the tale, Dave.
That's right. That's right. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for taking the time to take a look at this. 502, the building on the corner of Fifth Avenue and A Street is, it's a beautiful lot. It's a terrible building. There's holes in the roof. We actually have just exterior pictures because we weren't too terribly excited about going interior to take pictures because it's just in tough shape. We'd like to enhance the area. We're thinking of doing the 5 twin home or townhouses. We're going to have one that's going to face A Street, so it's going to have kind of more of a single family look to it from that viewpoint, and then we're going to have 4 that are on the Fifth Avenue side with views of Island Park and then also A Street. It's a unique site. We're going to keep all the trees on site. It's unique because of Fifth Avenue and the contour of that Fifth Avenue has there as far as ingress and egress. So the most optimal way is coming in off of A Street because it's flat versus all the concrete work and landscaping work that would be to come off of Fifth Avenue. And I say that because we looked at condos, we looked at a variety of different things there, from twin homes to 2 homes to the 5 units that we're proposing now, to a condominium building with 6 units, and this just made the most sense. We think it's a happy medium between downtown and the rental market in a traditional apartment versus being in a situation where you have your own autonomy, so to speak. You've got your own entrances and your own garages. Without an incentive, without help, this just wouldn't work. If you guys have any questions, I guess I can go from there.
Any questions?
Dave, do you want to flip through the drawings so they can see those?
Okay. Okay, so you can see the building in the top left corner there. That's just all these are exterior. Again, all the trees, the shrubs in front of the house, those will be gone, but all the trees that are on the boulevard, those will all stay. And the entrance on the south side of the property is where the garages would go. Let me see if I can keep going here. That one? Okay, so this is the Fifth Avenue is up on the top of the north side of the building. A Street is off to the west. So the garages, or the driveway would come in this way. On the south side of the property, you have the garage entrances towards the back side of the building. The one unit on the end, which is on the west side, that would face 8th Street. The other ones would face 5th Avenue. So from the 8th Street side, it would kind of stay with the look of 8th Street, almost as if it looked like a single-family house. We did meet with the neighborhood, Joe Burgum and the group there, and they were all happy that we were developing the property and with the proposal that we put before them. We showed them all this, and they were excited that something was going to be done with the buildings. It's going to be a 3-story building. There'll be some livable on the main floor, but then the real livable part starts on the 2nd and 3rd floors. It's 3 bedrooms, 3.5 bathrooms. There's going to be patios and decks to the west and to the north. There might be something to the east as well, but for sure on the north and west sides. And here's some exterior renderings of the building. So here's the 8th Street side. So it has a nice look to it. There'll be brick, there'll be some hardboard and some metal siding. The garages are coming in off the side here. And it'll definitely enhance the neighborhood.
Very good. Any other questions? So Dave, that driveway coming off 8th Street, is the driveway on the other side now?
The driveway is on this side, Dave, yep.
And so you're just going to be changing that, and so, but the neighbor to the immediately next door, they don't have a problem with that?
No, they actually have a driveway that we just did parallel to it right here.
Okay. Very good. Any other comments or questions?
Will it be an association, or how will lawn care and stuff like that be taken care of?
Yeah, it'll be handled through an association. It'll be pretty simple because there's not a lot of lawn care. It'll be lawn and snow, and then just building maintenance. But again, it's probably exterior insurance and so forth. But interior, you have your own autonomy. You've got your own entrances and your own garages and stuff.
Anything else from anybody? Otherwise, we'll accept a motion.
Jim, in the pro forma, they had an interest rate of 7%, is that true? At least that's what I saw in the PMF report.
I believe that's what we had in there, right? Yeah.
I think so.
Aren't there friendly bankers that can do better, John? Isn't there better rates than that?
7's probably about what market's at right now.
Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah, the world's changed a little bit, and it's more so ever moving now than it was. Well, you guys have all been through it, so yeah.
And a lot of times with these pro formas, this is assuming that there's absolutely no problems. I mean, you generally have some contingency built in there, but with any sort of projects like this, you might run into issues. And so, there's obviously risk involved in doing something like this.
If you guys want to throw the Renaissance zone in there too, that'd be great.
Wrong block.
Just across the street.
Try though.
Move to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Same sign. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave. Moving on, the last item on our agenda, the request for a pilot for a water park. Jim, will you get us started?
Thank you. This is a request for payment in lieu of taxes for a water park project. The specific request would be a 20-year pilot on both the water park building and an attached hotel, as well as the second building, and then also the parking ramp itself, to the extent that it may have property tax, it may have to pay property taxes. I should first talk about our current policy is that we really only do this when it's more of a downtown, deteriorated, slum blight, or difficult to develop site. This is probably the easiest site in the world to develop. Its infrastructure's all in. There's nothing on the ground to worry about. But in this case, it is a development that would build a facility that would have a public benefit. The parking ramp is close to the arena, it's close to a sports, softball diamonds, baseball diamonds, and so there would be some public use as well as, the public that may attend the water park. So I first took a look at our policy. If I apply the policy today, I'd say, well, the site will develop anyway, so we don't really need to help. But, it wouldn't, if we take that approach, we probably won't get a parking ramp at that site, and the amount of development would be less. And so the way I've restructured the policy is to kind of open the door a crack to allow these types of incentives, whether it be TIF or pilot, when you're developing facilities that provide some sort of public benefit. In this case, it would be a parking ramp. So I don't think we want to do this with every commercial development that comes along, but this one is unique. So we'd really need to change that policy first and take that to City Commission. But maybe next, let's take a look at the water park, learn about what's being proposed here, see what the development is. And this is a little different than a request that we received probably a little over a year ago, where they wanted an exemption for the entire site. This would be focused on a smaller portion of that overall Anderson Field redevelopment. This development, it's called Eola. So that's Blake is with Epic. Want to introduce yourself and walk through the presentation.
Yeah, thank you all. Appreciate your time today and the consideration on this, and thank you, Mr. Gilmore. Blake Nybakken with Epic Companies, and what we've got today is a proposal that we feel is a very critical component to us being able to help provide a public 500 space parking ramp at our development as part of a smart growth, high density mixed use development. I'll give just a brief overview before we get too far into the packet, but we're basically proposing 2 lots that would participate in this pilot program that would help support us being able to finance the public parking ramp that's going to be built. The 2 lots, as Mr. Gilmore suggested, the water park and resort just south of our proposed ramp, and then the lot just west of there. No other lots in the development are being proposed to be part of this pilot program. So there are going to be other lots that as they come online, like our first project, that's, if you've driven on 45th Street lately, 2 7-story buildings right across the street there from Play It Again Sports, and that value itself is about a $36 million project. So those 2 buildings coming online are going to have about $470,000 of annual property taxes once that's fully online. The public benefit of this ramp, we feel it's going to be a benefit in many ways. It's going to allow us to continue with this high density development that's going to bring higher value developments as opposed to, some other stuff that you see along 45th Street with, smaller outlots, smaller developments. I think that was one of the reasons why we won the RFP for this land from the Park District in the first place. They saw that we were going to do a lot more than what our competitors were going to do. So they were on board with that. We also guaranteed that we would maintain that 4-acre public space in the middle, and we're hoping that this additional public parking ramp is going to be another benefit. And then you look at the water park itself, and this is going to be a regional attraction. This is going to be one of those quality of life amenities that is going to be great for the community itself. We hear a lot these days about employer attraction, employee retention. When you've got somebody who is applying for jobs and they're looking at Sioux Falls versus Fargo versus Minneapolis versus Omaha, we want to be one of those reasons why they consider the Fargo community overall. So we're just trying to add to that value of life. So the 2 lots that we're proposing, we're projecting that they would pay about $24,000 annually during this pilot program, and that once they come out of the pilot program, they're estimated to produce over $1.1 million annually in property taxes. And so I'll start going through the slides here so we can take a look at this project a little bit more specifically, and I'd be happy to answer any questions along the way. So this first one, this gives a little breakdown of where we're at. This is kind of our overall site plan on the north end up here. You'll see this is Interstate 94, and on the west side, this is 45th Street. So our development right here, just adjacent to the Cornerstone Bank Arena, the rest of the Anderson and Thoroldson baseball fields here from the Fargo Park District, and then the Red River Zoo is just adjacent here. So a lot of public amenities just adjacent to a lot of activity. And again, we feel that this development is just going to help bolster that to be a greater public benefit, going to bring a lot of people to the community, and hopefully a lot of more economic activity going on. The water park itself, this is going to be a big water park. This is going to be a 50,000 square foot facility. Amenities inside there like a wave pool. There's several slides. There's going to be cabanas. There's going to be ninja cross. There's going to be kids splash area. A lot of different activities. So this isn't going to be just a hotel with a little pool connected to it and they call it a water park resort. This is going to be an attraction where people don't have to drive to Minneapolis to go to a Great Wolf Lodge type of deal. This is going to be right here in our community, and we think that that's going to draw our consultants who are going to manage the facility, SNL Hospitality. They think that this is going to draw people in from outwards of 180 miles. So we think this is going to have a significant impact. It's going to be 135 rooms in the 7-story tower connected to the facility. Going to have other features like a family entertainment center, which is basically like a big arcade. They call it kind of like a Las Vegas for kids, where you'll have all the games and such. There'll be a family-friendly bar and restaurant in there. So just lots of activities that are going to generate economic development. So reasons why we feel that this should be considered for supporting with a program such as a pilot. We feel like this project continues to align with some of the City of Fargo's goals, such as the GO 2030 comprehensive plan. High density, smart growth, similar to a downtown district, prosper as a business center with numerous commercial tenants, park smart, play with a purpose. I mentioned the 4-acre public space there. Going to be a lot of activity here that's just going to help complement the surrounding areas. Those key objectives in the bottom left-hand corner, those are items that we feel, if you look at like the other P3 guidelines, if you're looking at a mixed use development for other incentives, I feel that we meet almost 9 out of 10 of those. When you're looking at compatible with adjacent area, sidewalk, bike trails, served by existing infrastructure, replacing surface parking, there's a lot of reasons why we feel that this would be an appropriate use for this. If you look at the exhibit on the top right corner there, so those are the 2 lots identified in the pink border that we're proposing to participate in this pilot program. The southwest corner, this was for illustration purposes only. This represents about 385 surface parking spaces. We're proposing a ramp that's 500 spaces, and we're just doing this to demonstrate, surface parking takes up a lot of space. The buildings that I mentioned that are $36 million value, those are right here. So not only would that take out the potential for future buildings like that, but it would also take up a lot of green space. And again, we don't have as much development or as much parking as we would with a parking ramp. And then when I talk about economic impact, we've done other projects in other communities. I've seen what it's done. A lot of reference gets made to our development in West Fargo called the Lights. I think we've had a substantial impact on development in the surrounding areas. You look at areas like where Randy's 2 is and Mas Tequila and some of those office buildings there, none of that existed before the Lights came online. So we feel that like a development like this is not only going to be have an economic impact on and property value impact where we're developing, but also in the areas around it. And I think that, there was an article that when Sickies took over the Old Chicago site after Old Chicago closed during COVID, they mentioned our development specifically. So I think hopefully we're just going to continue to spur, outside developments and not just what we've got going on there. And then the last page here, this is just a little bit of history on what this property has done. So for the previous 20 years before we got it from the Park District, Park District wasn't paying any property taxes on it. We're projecting that just the 2 lots that are participating in the pilot, if they contribute about $24,000 annually, we'll have almost $500,000 impact in property taxes paid over that 20-year period. Once they come out, the next 20 years, that's when the big bump comes. That's over $1.1 million annually, and over a 20-year period, over $22 million. And that's no inflation, no increased property values. That's just taking our proposed construction costs and continuing that on for the 20-year period. And then I mentioned our mocked property. That's the one that's going to be open this fall. That one's going to contribute approximately $470,000 annually, or over a 20-year period, over $9 million. I also did a little bit of math just to show what the rest of the development, not including the 2 pilot lots, we're projecting that to be between $95 and $100 million of property value once we complete that. And so that, once complete, that would contribute over $1.25 million in annual property taxes. So that's without counting either of the 2 pilot lots that we're considering. So still a substantial impact on the economy with property taxes. And then the last thing on this slide, this is just to show a comparison from what we're requesting and what's previously been supported as a ramp project. The NP Avenue ramp, and just as a point of clarification, fully supportive of that. I think what that developer has done downtown has been tremendous for the community of Fargo. This is nothing other than just an illustration, and I think they've done wonderful things, and I think that's one of the main reasons why we've got such a great downtown in Fargo. But similar sized ramps, they were approved for a TIF. We're requesting a pilot. We're going to own this one privately. That's part of what the bank group wants us to do, is own this ramp privately. So we're not asking for city ownership. We're not asking for any cash up front, where I believe that one was approved for $4 million up front. We'll be able to leverage those tax savings and finance this privately, where I believe the city bonded that one through a TIF project. Any debt service coverage would be the responsibility of our investors then. Whereas, if the city owns it, I believe that one had a projected shortfall of about $350,000 annually once the TIF expires. So there wouldn't be that risk to the city there. We're projecting that we can build this one cheaper. Again, I know the constraints of building in a downtown area. We don't have those limitations here. Smaller site, more turns, it's a more expensive ramp, but just for illustration purposes. And again, with us owning it privately, we would be responsible for the maintenance and the management of that facility, and that would not fall back on the city. And we're even going as far as to say, once this pilot expires, we would sign a development agreement to pay property taxes on that ramp, just to ensure that we can get this going. So we're trying to make this as appealing as possible to get the support to get a program like this for incentives for us to build this ramp.
I think, any questions? I think we'll have lots of questions.
Thank you. I know that was a long speech, but I had a lot of information to get out, so
No,
thank
that's
you.
good.
Curiosity, sometimes in pilots, it's more acceptable to different political groups. A 15-year, how does a 15-year work for you guys?
I don't think that a 15-year would work. We really came at this with as concise of a proposal as we could get just to support the construction of the ramp. Right now, the 20-year pilot covers about $11 million of our $12 million project costs. So, we're going to cover that gap. We're going to cover probably $200,000 in annual maintenance and operation costs. And then again, we're offering to pay, property taxes on that ramp when it comes offline. So I don't think that anything less than 20 years, the way we've got it modeled right now, works.
But you've got a revenue stream coming in for the parking ramp. Doesn't that help offset it?
Probably not much. It'll probably help with that $200,000 of maintenance and annual fees. But as we've got it modeled right now, just the debt service on the construction of that ramp alone, it's more than what we're looking to take advantage of with this 20-year savings.
Cosgrove's got a lot of experience in revenue from parking ramps, John. Does that help in this picture, do you think, or should we ignore it?
What are you anticipating charging? Is this free parking, or are you going to be?
I think we're anticipating it being run very similar to the downtown parking ramps, where there'll be a fee to park during certain hours, and then there'll be free parking during other hours. We're also working with the park district so that we can coordinate, if they have events on, during certain times, during certain days, that we could arrange for some free parking as well. We haven't quite ironed that out, trying to get this first step done to make sure that we can build it, but yeah, there would be a fee to pay even though it's open to the public, but I would believe that it would be in line with what you're seeing locally here.
Yeah, I was just thinking that your cash flow from that, if you've got, 500 spots and you're 50% occupied, so you get 250 kind of producing revenue. I don't know what you're anticipating. Downtown Minneapolis, hotel parking adjacent probably runs $50 a night, probably wouldn't be that high, but that cash flow may have a pretty significant impact to
Okay.
your proposal. And that would help to see what that looks like.
Okay.
I think the other thing to sell to the commission, we would need, it's okay, Dave, if I go, yeah. We probably would need your arrangement with the park board, because that's a public good. If you're going to allow park board to utilize parking for free for their events, I think that helps sell it to our commissioners, because that's public good. The downtown NP Avenue basically is offering free parking after 5 o'clock, and for the theater, we think that's a significant spiff to help them out getting people into the theater. But I would presume we'd like the zoo help, that'd probably be daytime parking. So I think if you could work out something you might give to the zoo and then something you might give to the park district, it would help us see more of a public good for us to give you the pilot.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a couple. Knowing that obviously we have to talk about the policy at some point, but having a but-for test and a score sheet, I know we sometimes don't do that in the past for this type of request, but considering the length, the 20 years, it's a long period of time. And I think we having due diligence for the public, having an incentive like this, that we really need to check all the boxes and validate what's in the proposal. So those are two things that I think I would like to put out there and see what everybody else thinks. And then also looking at, is there any, you mentioned the SNL Hospitality is doing some numbers and providing you some information, at least what it would have from a draw regionally. Have they done any look on what this might help for the current in-city or some of the cities around us, and what it would do for a benefit for them, knowing that this is something that would be provided from the city of Fargo as an incentive?
Are you talking about economic?
Yeah, any
impact
primary
for us?
research, is this a need? Is this something even, I know it's going to help
yeah.
regionally for everybody else, but when we
Yeah.
think about giving an incentive that's from the city, is
Yeah,
how do the local citizens?
Yeah, so
feel
we
about
actually,
it?
before we started this project, we hired a different group, Hotel and Leisure Advisor Group, did a market study for us. They also put out a public survey, and in a market this size, they said, if you get about 2,000 respondents, that would be viewed as a very successful survey. When we put that out, we got almost 7,000 respondents, and the demand was very supportive of a project like this. There was just a lot of positive feedback. So yeah, we have done that, and I can make that study. We've got 2 books that are about 3 inches thick each that have our full. They've got our full market study in there. We did an appraisal on the front end that's since then been updated. But yeah, we've got a lot of information that we've done on the front end of this that demonstrates that there's a need. And actually, their feedback was like, it wasn't really a question of should we have one, but it was like, how come this community doesn't have one? So I think it's very well going to be supported by this community.
Perfect, thank you. That would be really helpful to add in as even a summary sheet of some of the high-level information that we can
Sure.
attach as an addendum to this as we continue to discuss it.
Yeah, I think if the committee is comfortable with moving forward, that probably the 2 things to put together, one would be to take the financials and send it to PFM, see what that rate of return is, as well as get you some other information on kind of the economic impact. The other would be to work with the attorney's office to draft a development agreement that would spell out how much public use will we receive with this parking ramp.
So Jim, the other thing is to make sure that we're following the policy that we currently have, and if we're not, we have to revisit that. And the other thing is, I think the state doesn't determine that tourism is a primary sector, and that might be something that would impact this too. I think we all know this will have a positive economic impact, but we want to make sure we're following the rules and our policies. So can you, and I think this is, and maybe you can talk a little bit about your timeline, because some of this, I think we need to take a little bit of time as the city to make sure we're doing it correctly.
Yeah, I think on the timeline, I believe they really need an answer in July, whether or not the city's going to support them or not. So we do have some time, not a lot of time. As far as, is tourism a primary sector? Well, something like this, it's kind of both. And if I take my family out there, it's not really primary sector. If someone comes from Williston for a weekend in Fargo, then that's primary sector. So it's hard to know, what percentage of each. As far as the policy, I do think the city needs to amend the policy if we're going to approve this. So we, understand that we may consider other similar projects in the future.
So I don't know if anybody has any comments, but I think we just, we'll basically continue this today, but there's lots of things that we can work on. But I do think if you could give this, the information as to what we would need to look at for changing, because my question is then, do we have to go through the city commission too, as well?
Yeah, so I think you need to change the policy, have city commission. I guess you could do that right away if you wanted to make, that change is before we begin to work on this, or if you want to wait and do them both at the same time, we could also do that.
Well, I think we need to, we see it ahead of time and have the ability to discuss it if we're going to change the policy instead of just saying, well, we're going to change it today.
Yeah, I do have a draft in there. It's kind of maybe a little hard to read, but
I guess, I don't know, maybe you can, if anybody else has got any questions about that, but I just think we need to proceed with a little bit of caution, because this is just my perspective. It's a great project, and we know it will be great for Fargo, but from the tax incentive perspective, I think we just need to be a little careful, and I think we have a few questions, so.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Jim did propose some change to the policy language there. And we can see all the positives of the project, but we are, as Jim started with, taking a program that's primarily been used for slum and blight, and now we're applying it to greenfields, which I don't have a problem with. I think it's going to incent development around there, but once we do this one, I can see quite a few more coming. And what we're seeing is that as the value of the surface land increases, ramps become more feasible, and that you are going to pick up the additional development. And I think in the development agreement would want to include, as we look at this, instead of the parking lot, what would be the minimum project value developed where that parking lot would be, which would then help us understand what we're investing in from the ramp. That we'd be trading off tax dollars from the ramp, but if we could have a minimum required development on those lots, and I don't know what the number would be, but if it were 25 million that would come online with running sequentially with the pilot, we'd start to see that benefit. So, and I think too, the point that if we could do the but-for analysis would help us to understand it. But I do think, and I don't know where that would have, I guess we'd make recommendation to the commission, but we'd want the commission to weigh in on what they would see the policy should be for the change as we go forward here. And do this all within the time frame of July.
So Jim, where it has annual property tax of $23,000 a year, as I understand it, the pilot is for the hotel and water park?
yeah.
The parking ramp is separate?
Well, they're asking for a pilot on the water park and hotel attached, as well as that other building you see on the top of the page with the pink around it. Parking ramps can be taxable and are sometimes not. Parking structures that are open to the public can be tax exempt. They can apply for a tax exemption under state law, and the assessor then would have to grant those. If it's a parking ramp where it's for the hotel only period then they probably have to pay property taxes, or only for the corporate client. And so we have, so, for instance, the Block 9 parking garage downtown, a portion of that's taxable where there's restricted parking, and a portion of it's tax exempt where the public can park. It's sort of it's not, space by space, but more of how Mike prorates it, so. I don't know if that.
Because I just think we need to have a financial analysis, is because there's so many moving parts in this, of what does the city actually get on tax? Is it higher than the 26 when you put in the parking ramp part of it? Is there revenue in the parking ramp that they're getting that's not exposed right now? Could you do a pilot for 15 years if they had revenue coming in from the parking ramp that offset their costs? I think there's a variety of different scenarios, but would like our financial advisor to say, hey, well, how about a 15-year pilot, and here's how we'll manage the parking ramp. But I think Commissioner Pipcorn and I know the public is going to have to see what is the gain for public good or for the city to do this. I don't disagree. It's a great project. I love the project. But John, you're exactly right. We're going to have a couple other development companies coming after us if we start P3 and stuff with people with taxables. And I know Blight was kind of what we want to get rid of, but this will be a second downtown. You'll have a water park, you'll have the zoo, you'll have baseball, it's just like a mini downtown, which is fantastic for our tax base. I have 60, 70 million here that's going to go into this area. No question that would help. And then I look at it, this is Block 9 in the Greenfield, basically, because you're going to pay $1 million worth of taxes when it's all done. Block 9 brings us $1 million taxes when all the exemptions are done as well. So there's no question that helps cities' bottom line.
And that's in addition to the 1.2 million that we're going to develop around there.
Yeah, so I think the public has to see what is, we know it's a long-term game here, but what is it that they get out of it that it makes us as the team to say, yep, we do want to incentivize this. But to Jim, I think we do have to look at that policy. And John, do we have something that's reasonable at this time that we would put in, or do we have to rethink that as far as verbiage?
Well, I think you have to identify sort of the metrics that you're going to start measuring, and it's a little more difficult with Slum and Blight. You're removing that, but this is the adjacent benefits, the spin-off benefits, the additional development that all come in under that.
So you're actually thinking Gilmore has to do some work to figure this thing out, so it makes some sense, so we have rules that we all understand, that we feel comfortable with. But I would say, Commissioner Pipcorn, however we can incentivize us to move this along as quickly as possible will be helpful. But I think we've added some questions, Jim, to your bailiwick to try to answer with the developer and see what you can come up with.
Go ahead, Don.
Yep. So I think a few number of folks have hit on this, but for me in my banking mind, doing two columns to where, hey, if we put in the parking ramp here and we add these two additional buildings that would otherwise be a parking lot, this is what the future property tax payments would be, versus if we just keep it a massive parking lot, this is what the future taxes would be. I mean, for me, I know that we've all hit on that, but that's how I think about it in terms of something like that, where it's the public good.
And I think the overall, I mean, we'll need to look at it too, because I think the overall balance of our development would be reduced without a parking ramp as well.
Yep.
So it's not just these two lots that would be impacted by it, but to create this high density development, you got to park them somewhere.
Yep.
Otherwise it doesn't work for us unless the city gets rid of parking requirements altogether, but I don't foresee that happening. So, I think there'll be maybe a couple of different ways that we can look at that.
Sure. And then on top of that too, the two buildings that you guys would be, if you went forward with the parking ramp and we were to be putting two buildings in the spot that otherwise would be just pavement parking, would there have to be some sort of a threshold of how valuable the buildings, would be, where we won't want something that would be, nor would you guys want value-wise. You don't want to be building a single-story, property. You'd want to have a large one type
Right.
of situation, so then people can see the value of, hey, when the TIF comes off, this is what the property taxes would be.
Yeah, and hopefully we're already demonstrating. Like I mentioned, this first building in the northwest corner, that's a $36 million project right there. So when that one comes online this fall, That's going to generate, the first full tax year that it's online, it's going to be approximately $470,000 annually. So that's already happened. That's already there. And we can do that, in 2 different spots on the property if we can do this ramp. If not, those buildings probably get reduced in addition to what we're able to do here. So yeah, it'll be a substantial impact.
Mr. Chairman, we've done that in years back where what we've done is said, okay, the parking lot's undeveloped at this point, that in the developer agreement, we could set a value that it has to hit, or that you agree to special assessments to that amount if, you didn't put that value on the lot. So it's just kind of a way that everybody's comfortable going forward then.
Sure.
I do love the project though. I mean, it looks awesome. I mean, I can tell you from I have a young family. I have heard for years, why don't we have an indoor water park in Fargo?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, there's a lot of buzz about it.
Yep.
Our marketing team does a nice job, and you see someone wearing a shirt, the Wave, and they're like, "Hey, when's that coming again? Is that ready to go?" And it's on the radio. People are excited about it. There's definitely a buzz, so we're hoping that we can move forward on this.
Can you help me and go back to the slide that showed like the overall site plan with the zoo and youth hockey? So have you looking at where that ramp is, has there been any discussion with youth hockey or any of the other like surrounding areas on easy access to get there?
Yep.
Because I look at it as like, if you got to haul all your equipment, all your kids, you're being like, is there access, or have you talked to those individuals to make a public parking ramp not only in a good spot, but have it be easily accessible to the locations that it's supposed to add value to?
Yeah, we've talked to the park district several times about that. I mean, one thing with our parking ramps, we're trying to create skyway connections wherever possible, just for the convenience factor, safer for pedestrians. You're indoors instead of hauling your hockey bag through snow and stuff. So yeah, we have looked at that. I don't know how far they've gone with their exploration. That kind of falls on the southwest corner of their rinks, which is kind of their back of house area. They've got Zambonis and stuff over there, but there's ways to do it, whether it's making pedestrian friendly connections, adding an extra entrance. I know that they're also looking at relocating a maintenance building. So yeah, there's several things that they're currently evaluating with this.
Will there be a skyway connection between the ramp and the water park?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we've already been talking with, so that's part of our PUD modification process that's underway right now, and I believe we're in planning commission here in June to hopefully get that approved. But yeah, we're intending for a skyway connection going across 24th, and then one to the west to the future building that would also have that skyway connection. So.
Very good. Any other comments? But so I guess the plan of action is that this will be coming up, but there's lots of things, and like the mayor said, we've got lots of work for Jim to do to keep him out of trouble. What the correct action, should we just continue it for the next meeting? Is that what we should do, or what do you suggest, Jim?
I mean, I think we can just put it on your next agenda and continue discussion on it. I don't think you need a motion, but I appreciate all your thoughts today. It helps us kind of guide what things should be in the development agreement. And one thing we could move ahead with is that but-for test, and have that information hopefully for your next meeting.
Right, and basically it'll be an ongoing conversation between the developers and us, and we'll try to get all these questions answered. Go ahead, John.
one question I had is, it came up, what was the time frame on any, because obviously we meet once a month here, and so there's going to be a significant amount of moving parts and information here. I mean, open lines of communication. Is there a better way to, versus once a month here on something this large?
Yeah, I mean, probably going to take a month just to get a draft development agreement and the but-for test. But yeah, I mean, after that, you might need a couple special meetings or possibly a city commission meeting to focus on this.
Is there an option to do a special meeting just to try to get some of our policy language or some discussion back and forth on what that should be?
Maybe we can,
Prior,
maybe we can leave it this way. If we have enough where we can call a special meeting, then we'll do so if that's okay. And if everyone can make it, that's great. But that's, if that is satisfactory. And the other thing, if you don't mind, so we talked about the score. We don't really have a score for this. We have something similar.
And we really don't at this point. I think though, as we create the policy, maybe it's similar to our TIF policy where there are different goals and we try to, check as many boxes as you can, so.
I guess from my perspective, I wish we would pursue that because that just helps make things a little more objective. And so, and that might be a separate discussion and a little bit longer, but I just think that would help us with being consistent. Any other comments, Mayor?
It's not that necessarily the committee would come back together sometime, but I think what John is asking is maybe we can share information. If there's developments, Jim, going on here, if you could just share with the committee so we could have the option of making a comment or a question. The mayor continually asks, can you get it down to 15 years? But I mean, it'll be, if we could have a little bit, then when we come back together, it won't be this first time I saw it and I can't make a decision.
Okay.
And part of that is any sort of, project that I've been involved is, you might be waiting for some information for us and, if we can't get back to you and now you're waiting 30 days for some sort of an answer.
Yeah,
then
and
you can't move forward on, this could be back and forth for months.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that because we're kind of at that critical stage in our project where, I think we've raised about 15 of our $17 million of equity. We're expecting to wrap that up this month. We're working with our bank group. We're kind of checking off all our boxes with the city, with the PUD process and the replat. So I think everything's aligning and our construction manager, it's kind of a critical date where if we can't get going by the end of July, it's going to be hard to even get going this year. So, yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Anything else?
No additional items for me.
Very good. Thank you, everybody. That was an excellent meeting. Thank you, everybody, for being here, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.